Hello, PrimeLogue audiences. This is Ladette Moleta. I am here again with a special guest who is joining us today. His name is Jeff Pearce. He's actually been a guest of ours in the past. He's joined Prime Media probably about 6-7 months ago, I would say. So please tune in and listen to our conversation. Jeff, welcome back. How are you? And
I've been better. I've been less stressed. So yeah, no, I'm fine.
thank you so much for joining me again. It was a pleasure having you last time, and it's a pleasure having you now. Fast forward from the last time, so many things has happened, and you've been pretty busy, and you're quite famous in Ethiopia. You've visited Ethiopia since then as well. So I'm sure there's a lot of things that we can discuss, but we're going to kind of narrow what we're discussing for the interest of time and just focus on one area. But I'll give you a moment to introduce yourself, just for some people that may not know you. If you could please, Jeff, thanks.
I'm the bald pain in the ass that they don't want to talk about, but unfortunately has interfered with their narrative in terms of the TPLF in Ethiopia. So that's me. We'll make it short.
Thanks. Okay, I'll add to that and say that you're a historian, a writer. Anything else I should add?
That about covers it. What else am I? Oh, I'm apparently a genocide apologist. I'm a porn writer. What else? I'm in the employ of the prime minister. What other epithets? And
These are all the accusations you've been receiving for the last several months or about a year.
we all do. You do. I do. Everybody is a horrible person for daring to stand up against the dominant narrative. We're all tinfoil hat wearing genocide apologists, and how dare we actually like use facts? So there's that. So I don't sound bitter. No.
Well, yes, unfortunately, that's the truth. So that kind of brings us to the story to why I wanted to have you here at Prime Media. Recently, you're all over the news, really, and the whole world has been talking about the United Nations leaked audio, staff, senior officials leaked audio, giving information to you, actually, and we would like to talk about that, as well as this. This is surrounding also the 7 UN officials that the Ethiopian government has expelled. So I kind of wanted to ask you a few questions to kind of, get our audience to understand the background and, the current situation and what's, getting to happen and unfolding. I wanted to ask you, how did you get to have this discussion with these UN officials in the beginning?
One of them approached me through social media, through DMs, IMs, whatever you want to call it, through social media, wanted to discuss with me something. I wasn't even clear what it was about. They were very circumspect about what the topic would be. I had no clue what I was walking into. So that's sort of how it started. And I waited for them to go, okay, well, when you actually got to tell me what the hell you want to talk about. And it wasn't until I got to Addis when I flew over there in August on behalf of ECNAS and the other group in the United States that things sort of developed a quicker pace, where the person said, okay, you're in Addis, let's talk, let's get together and talk. And it was when I got together with that person that I was introduced to the other person The other individual, the other whistleblower, I asked them if they wanted to talk to me. They said yes, and it went from there. Now, the trouble is that nobody's getting the full story of what happened afterwards. And they just, so far, feel completely entitled to go ahead and talk about this and write about this without actually asking the guy who did the interview. It was not a leaked audio, it was a stolen audio, because when I flew home, I went through the security check at Addis Ababa airport, and I didn't discover until I went through the second security checkpoint that my digital recorder, which is a model just like this, was gone. And I went to airport staff. There was one gentleman who was openly belligerent to me, told me that if I wanted to go back, I didn't even raise this contingency. He said, well, if you go back and check, you got to go all the way back. You've got to run through security again. I said, well, could you please call somebody or call to see if somebody found it there? Nope, wouldn't help me. Walked away. Went to another guy. I'm not fluent in Amharic. People generally know that now, which is on me. The other gentleman that I spoke to with security is not completely fluent in English. I don't think he fully understood. And so you're there and you're going, okay, you're screwed. And because the story that I put out had already been put on Medium, literally a day or so, I think, before I was flying out, it never occurred to me that someone would be interested in the raw material. Why would they? It just never occurred to me. And so I even forgot that the raw audio was on the recorder because it's digital. I transferred it onto my laptop. I used it from there, transcribed it from there, wrote the story, blah, blah, blah. So the recorder was stolen. It was not returned to me. Whoever took it did not leak it. When you leak something, that's a choice. Somebody leaks to a journalist, they're taking it from their employer or a government office, and they're saying, here, do this. We think something is wrong. Something is here. Here, take this and use this. That's not what happened. Someone stole my property, stole the audio, and what's more, what seems to be quickly forgotten is that it was edited. The original file that everybody is circulating, the original file of what everybody is circulating around, and where it starts of me talking about the recorder and saying, well, I'm not super familiar with using this because it's been a while, is 22 minutes. I understand that the file that's circulating around is 12 minutes. What happened to the other 10 minutes? They left those out. Interesting, isn't it? How that serves somebody's agenda.
So that was the only thing stolen from you, or did you lose an entire bag, or it was just your?
No, the thing is, it was in my pocket. I had completely forgotten. I put it into the tray when it goes through the machine, come out the machine, and I cannot honestly remember if I took it then and it was taken somewhere in between those checkpoints, or if it was gone then. I can't honestly remember at this point. But the day that I flew home, I reported to the representative of ECNAS and said, yeah, somebody swiped my recorder and ordered a new one. This is the exact same model. And so a month goes by, a whole month goes by, story's up on Medium, life goes on, and suddenly these files come out, and I learned about it through a friend, where all these files, something like 5 of them, were circulated. I haven't been through them all because I've got other things to do, but yeah, it's ridiculous. It's just crazy. And so you've got certain idiots, Tom Gardner among them, who writes for The Guardian and The Economist, who is yucking it up with TPLF trolls while setting his profile to private and thinks that's going to hide what he's doing. and says, oh, it's laughable that I came out with this story that the recorder was stolen. To which I want to emphasize for people, why would I leak audio on a story that I already published? Why would I burn my sources and make it so that nobody could potentially not want to trust me and talk to me ever again? Why would I do that? It's ridiculous. So they're idiots. And so the other thing that's interesting about the audio that's being circulating around is it's clearly serving somebody's agenda, but it's not clear whose agenda, because the story that I published has to do with one of these sources talking about how the TPLF walked into UN offices and demanded the names of sexual assault victims and the locations of safe houses. This is a big deal. Why are we not talking about that? Instead, we're talking about the political infighting of the UN, and I appreciate that, and that is a story. That's a story because these two sources went on about it, and okay, but to me, it's a much bigger story that the TPLF are trying to get the names of sexual assault victims, which violates their privacy for their own political motives. There's other stuff going around in terms of what they were discussing about on the audio. You hear talking about Dr. Tedros in terms of interfering. Well, and somebody wrote in a Reuters story, excuse me, and said, well, they said this without proof. Yeah, which is why I didn't run it. You don't see that in my copy. I mention the infighting, the power struggle within the UN, but I do not include quotes of that because I can't verify that information. So nobody's bothering to actually go back and do their proper homework in terms of the real background of what happened.
So what was your, you said the stolen video that's been out is about 12 minutes, but the entire thing was about 22 minutes. What was your...
Well, that's only the first, sorry to interrupt. That's only the first file. During the interview, I turned off the recorder off and on several times because there were times that the sources wanted something off the record. Now, if you say off the record, the principle, the basic journalistic principle is you can't use it. Somebody's giving you information, you know, you've given your word, you're not going to use it. That's fine. But they were very skittish, and so they wanted me to turn the recorder off. So I turned the recorder off. So the interview is broken up into several files. Sorry?
I was going to say, sounds like you have gathered a lot more information than what is actually out there then. But that's basically what you're saying.
Yeah, and quite frankly, what I think they're doing is, and of course, the TPLF trolls speculate wildly. Some idiot went, gee, I don't know who uses a digital recorder these days. I do, you moron. I do. You know, they're plentiful. You can get them from Amazon. You use the technology that you're comfortable with. And then said, well, I'll bet if there no more, I can't remember the rationale, but it was like, if there's more leaked videos, he'll have leaked it. Really? No, dummy. If there's more leaked audio, it's because they're screwing around with it. There is more information during the interview, but I think somebody is playing a long game of dumping this stuff to serve somebody's agenda. I can tell you what's on the audio because I'm the person who did the interview. We talked about that infighting. We talked about the leaked audio from March, the really leaked audio, all the way back from March of the meeting, Zoom meeting of UN officials over sexual assault, violence. And the sources implicated one particular individual who was one of the 7 saints who was kicked out of the country, declared persona non grata. I don't have proof of that. I asked them, it's on the audio if they ever if they ever release the full version, but they're selectively editing it. But on the full audio interview, I say, what proof do you have? Words to that effect. And they didn't have it. And they admit they didn't have it. So I can't run that because it's libel. So they implicated that person. And I'm not going to say whose name it was because that's repeating a libel. But there's lots more on that. There's lots more being discussed. There's a whole discussion, which again, I find it very interesting that this was selectively edited. There's a whole discussion about the ethics of interviewing rape victims, how journalists do their job. And we discuss how, and it's actually in my article, how Channel 4 did their little investigation and penetrated a safe house for sexual assault victims in McKellar, waltz in, film the outside of the house, which if anybody lived in the neighborhood, they could probably identify. And nobody thinks twice about, hey, this is a huge violation of the women's rights who are there and the safety protocols that are in place. And what are you doing as a journalist talking to these women after the worst day of their lives and trying to pull out what amounts to drama for your camera? It makes you cringe. It makes me cringe over to rethink, okay, how did I conduct myself ethically in the past? Because as one source points out, you need to have professional training to talk to a sexual assault victim, and journalists don't have that. So what the hell are we doing? That's not cool. So there's a whole discussion on that. That didn't get leaked when they stole it from me. There's also a full interview with a young gentleman, Solomon Wendemera, if I'm probably not pronouncing his name properly, for which I apologize, a young TPLF, anti-TPLF Tigrayan activist. Now, notice that they didn't leak that or spread that around, because here's a young gentleman saying the most virulent, most harsh things about the TPLF, and he stands up with his head held high. He let us use his name. He agreed to let me take his photo. The material was being prepared, being co-written with a young journalist that I worked with in Ethiopia. We haven't finished the articles yet. That's supposed to come out. So go ahead and circulate that, you jackass, because the source won't care. He's out in the open. But isn't it interesting that that isn't being passed around? So
Interesting, very interesting. How do you think the international media is handling this?
contemptibly. Let me read to you what Robbie Corey-Boulet wrote in an article.
Can you let our audience know who that is, please?
He writes for Agence France Presse. I have a terrible French accent. AFP. This story is 11/10/2021, and you can find it online. I've quote tweeted it, and this is what he writes. Last week, multiple recordings surfaced online of alleged source name, and another senior UN official granting a lengthy interview to Jeff Pearce, a writer who has published multiple articles defending the government's conduct of the war against the Tigray People's Liberation Front. Well, that's cute. First of all, my articles defend Ethiopia. I don't defend the Ethiopian government. I don't work for the Ethiopian government. I don't need to defend the Ethiopian government. And it's very interesting that he leaves out that Jeff Pearce writes multiple articles that are very critical of how the mainstream Western media is covering the war. But we don't do that. Jeff Pearce has written several tweets that actually implicate his conduct in terms of how he covers the war. But we don't do that. Instead, we make it sound like I'm a government shill. And in the article that I put online in Medium, one of the sources actually criticizes the government directly and says they could be doing more in terms of providing resources for sexual assault victims, blah, blah, blah. And when I visited one of the IDP camps in Desi for my video report. We had a woman who was clearly traumatized and wanted to talk to us and said, "Where the hell is the government? What is the government doing? We ran it." So am I a government shill? I don't think so. What I am is writing, I do have a point of view, and my view is for Ethiopia and against a terrorist group which is trying to undermine the country. So that's one side. Oh, and it's very cute. The next day, he publishes an article because I wrote a quote tweet for this, and I said, "Thanks for acknowledging that I exist," because I've written several articles on the UN. I wrote an article which was picked up and shared by Tiffany Haddish, which infuriated them because it talked about how the TPLF are interfering with national exams in Mekelle, how UN officials are colluding with them and helping them. I wrote that article. I wrote an article just recently that came out, which my source shared an internal email, but nobody uses that. So the next story that's written by said, "Hey, thanks for acknowledging that I exist." And Simon Tesfamariam, who I'm sure your viewers know, did the same thing as saying, "Yeah, interested," words to the effect of, "Hey, you actually acknowledge that he's around." Well, the next day, the story, the follow-up story says, "The interviewer," and now I'm back to disappearing. And of course, he did not call me. He did not ask what is the context for how this audio got out there. Doesn't ask me in terms of, well, is it you on the audio? Is it the sources, to which I wouldn't have responded anyway because I made a pledge to protect their identities. Doesn't call me for anything. Just feels free to write about me. Reuters is also cute. Let me read to you what they did. It's hilarious. They asked me to comment on their story. They asked me at 5:17 in the morning my time. I don't get up that early. So by the time I get up, I don't realize this, but their story is up. And I said, "Okay, can we talk on the phone?" Nothing. They go ahead, publish their story. They already published their story without my knowing. And then I get this: "I am so sorry," from Maggie Fick, who is with Reuters. "I am so sorry I missed your message last night." That's very polite and nice. "It was after my shift had ended. I can update our story with one sentence. Sorry, but we have severe space limitations. If you send it over today." To which I am incredibly pissed off. Are you kidding me with this crap? So in other words, you're going to work on the assumptions that everything that you wrote is true, that there are no additional facts that need to be added to the story, and that if I want to actually have myself represented properly, I'm limited to one line. Well, as we've established earlier during this conversation, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You don't know what the fuck you're writing. You haven't verified the material with me, but you feel entitled to go out there and write about it, for which I am a central character in this little drama. Where the hell do you get the nerve? These people. It's just appalling. And this is what passes for journalistic craft these days. The proper thing to do would have been to try to get hold of me. I don't mind the fact that they went to press, so to speak, and couldn't reach me. What I find offensive is you don't do a proper follow-up. You now are in contact with me, and I'm saying, "Here, I'll give you the details." But no, you've got to have one line, and that's it. And we think we know everything, so that's all you get. To hell with you.
Interesting. Journalism has evolved lately. So let's
space requirements. Space requirements on space requirements on the internet where it can go forever. Sorry.
That's okay. How is the UN handling all this? I mean, we heard a lot of complaints, a lot of media attention about the 7 officials that were expelled from Ethiopia. And then now, because of the audio that came out that you were part of, we are hearing that the two officials are being called into New York for, I guess, I don't know if it's suspension or leave of absence. How is the UN handling it? I mean, it kind of, to me now, it sounds like a whistleblower case. I'm pretty sure there are certain rules and regulations within the UN system on how to follow or how to report such kind of issues. It sounds to me the fact that the UN officials reached out to you are, probably looking for an outlet for something that they feel is unethical or that they feel like is wrong, and they obviously feel like they need to talk to someone. That's why they contacted you, is my assumption. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure that organizations such as the UN will have steps to follow whenever these kind of situations arise. So it automatically sounds like it has put them on some sort of a violation for contacting you. Is that the case? I'm not 100% sure, but I'm just assuming that all organizations would have certain steps like that. How is the UN handling it? Obviously, they were very quick to issue and call the staff back. And what we are already seeing that there's a lot of support for these whistleblowers, I should say, the two UN officials, two African women. These two people's positions are at stake. And people feel like they owe them and are out there campaigning for them already. How is the UN handling it?
There's a lot to unpack here because you got multiple threads. The upshot is the UN is acting with contemptible duplicity. And the shenanigans go on. Let me quote you again from what this bottom feeder of AFP had put up and said, the departure of the source, I won't use their name, confirmed in a letter dated Monday and seen by AFP, risks undermining an aid response, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that means that the AFP writer was given that document by somebody inside the UN. Somebody else fed them the document for them to see. So they're still playing games in terms of their little friends who are sympathetic to the TPLF, obviously are still trying to control the narrative. How else would he get that information? Moreover, it says there's a Reuters story. I don't have it in front of me at the moment, but I'm paraphrasing, where they claim that they also, that from an internal document, that it was either AFP or Reuters, forgive me because I don't have the source right in front of me, but it claimed that one of the sources wasn't aware that they were being recorded. They were surreptitiously recorded. Well, that's asinine because you can hear on the audio, even in the edited version that got out, where they're quite aware that they were being recorded, and I wouldn't do that. Then so the source, if they did make this statement to the UN in an internal document, threw me under the bus to save their job. I hope that's not true. I hope that they didn't say that because it would be a stupid lie they're getting caught in. But worse is the fact that the UN creates a work climate in which that person would feel they have to do that. And I got contacted by a gentleman who I don't need to protect, who is another UN official, because the source called them and put them on speakerphone while the recorder was on. And you can hear me in the selective editing of the audio. And this person speaks, and I let the recorder run. But after the call, I said to the source, what you did there, I can't use any of that. I can record it in my country and in the United States. Yeah, you can record conversations like that, but you can't, as journalistically, use them without consent. So I had no intention of ever using that material. Well, that person DM'd me. And I will say to this gentleman, go to hell right now, because you tried to ambush me and say, I haven't talked about this in terms of your ethics. You didn't have my permission to record me, blah, blah. No, I didn't, and I didn't need to, but I never intended to use your material. Your colleague did that. My audio was stolen from me. The choice of what went public was taken out of my hands. The choice whether to go public was taken out of the source's hands. But it's very interesting, this person, when they DM'd me, didn't ask about one source and what was happening to them, didn't ask about the other source, didn't ask me to do more to protect them, to make sure they're okay, only asked about his own ass and how to protect that. And isn't that interesting? And I basically gave him back a response saying, I'm very sorry that you got caught in the middle of this, but no, I don't owe you anything in terms of towards the effect. I don't owe you anything. I never planned to use that material. And sorry that you got caught up in this, but no. And then I thought about it afterwards. I thought, this guy is only interested in saving his own skin. Didn't ask about his work colleagues at all.
So what do you think is going to happen to these UN officials? What's the UN doing?
Well, the thing is, further to the question in terms of how the UN is conducting this, look at the incredible hypocrisy with which they rushed to defend the seven saints, as I call them, who got declared persona non grata. Remember that there was supposed to be an investigation into that leaked audio back in March over the sexual assault Zoom video meeting, which, by the way, was edited, which my sources claim was edited, and a full transcript never got out. And common sense tells you it was, because why don't we ever hear, do we really think that meeting went on for like only a few minutes? We don't have the full meeting. So that was selectively edited. And the UN was supposed to investigate that. Where is it? Where's the investigation into that? They rushed to judgment and rushed to defend the seven saints, and Ethiopia was well within its rights to declare individuals, officials, persona non grata. There are several case examples of, I've done this online, other people have done this online on Twitter as well, point out, hey, this country declared so-and-so, Israel declared and kicked out these people, Somalia kicked out these people, Sudan, there were several countries we could rattle off. There were case examples where they've done this. The UN did not blink. They went, oh, well, that's too bad, and they went away. Not once did the UN advance this argument of, you can't do that, you can't kick them out. Our right to keep them there is over your right of sovereignty of a country. Can you imagine the argument there? But in the end, they pulled their people out, apparently, I'm told, on the pretext of safety. So within days of the two whistleblowers that I spoke to, these two sources, these two individuals, were called on the carpet, suspended, pulled from their jobs, could lose their jobs. And isn't it interesting? Again, I can't identify them, I gave my word. But isn't it interesting? Look at look at the gender involved. Look at where they come from. And then ask yourself, wonder what's going on here that you pick on these particular successful individuals and those you're willing to rush to suspend versus these others that you make a big fuss over with the Ethiopian government, to the point where you're literally arguing, well, your sovereignty comes second to us putting our humanitarian aid officials there. Give me a break. So.
Okay, yeah. So it sounds like we could be hearing more. It might not be over. We could be hearing more of the video in the future. We don't know since
Oh, the audio.
yes, the audio. Sorry.
Some idiot actually said, "I wonder why there's no video because it's a digital recorder of audio." um, What's interesting is nobody, not one of these mainstream media outfits, only one, Reuters reached out to ask me, and in the end, they only want one sentence. Not one has pursued the work that I've done. I've left practically a roadmap for them to follow on the UN collusion with the TPLF going back months. This story, which I published on Medium, at the start of September, left a clear trail on the TPLF trying to intimidate and get the names of sexual assault victims. Where's the matching copy on that? I just wrote a story, put it out last week, on a source gave me an internal email, which shows that the UN is looking the other way over forced recruitment at IDP camps. Where is the Western media? Why are they covering that? And my sources have given me more. I've got to dig through a whole whack of documents, and I got to go through the material that they gave me. So you better believe that there's going to be other scandals coming out. And will we see that covered? Let's see. At some point, the stink is going to be so high. The evidence is going to be so overwhelming. How long do you think you can ignore what some of us are putting out there? You know, how long can you do this act where you pretend, no, he doesn't exist. Oh, this work doesn't exist. La 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 la. It doesn't. It's out there. We're going to keep putting it out there until it's just so overwhelming that you can't pretend anymore.
Interesting. So it sounds like we're going to be hearing more. I wonder, one last question before we end this, because I know this could get long, but one last question. Why do you think, officials within the UN would conspire with, TPLF, or would not be fair in helping Ethiopia tackle the issues that we're facing? Is this an order that's coming from a particular, higher up, or is there corruption? Is there, people who are getting paid for this? I mean, what's your guess? Because it's sort of like a guess, or is this something? It's clear that this is not the first country that this is happening to, especially African country. So
on how the CIA for ages has been mucking around in Africa. It just came out, and I wanted to show you. So I mean, this is old. This is familiar territory. The problem is that we're using the word conspire, and of course that helps them because it is to a degree a conspiracy. But the thing is, the minute you say conspiracy, Guterres put out a tweet going, "Ooh, conspiracy, misinformation, disinformation." So he's trying to make us all sound like we're wearing tinfoil hats. No, we can see clear signs of organization. We can see clear signs of mutual cooperation. Mark Lowcock just retweeted Declan Walsh's latest article. Well, Declan Walsh is the guy who called child soldiers highly motivated young recruits. I mean, and we're supposed to believe that these people don't talk to each other. That's part of the problem, is we got these clusters of cognitive dissonance. The journalists all know each other. Most of them know each other if they're working at, say, one particular operations. The correspondents in Nairobi probably are on a high basis. Diplomats know each other. The people who are in the human rights organizations know each other. The think tanks know each other. Rashid Abdi works for the same operation as William Fungus Davison, Crisis Group. They both work for the same shop. So that helps create this collective narrative. And we have to look at it properly. Instead of using the word conspiracy, let's look in terms of the organization. if you talk to the same damn people over and over again, and let's put Davison on, let's put Tronville on, let's put Cameron Hudson on, let's put Mark Lowcock on to give the TPLF talking points, let's put him on PBS on the very night that he publishes an article in which he lies blatantly about how the war started and says, oh, the Ethiopian government took a military reaction to a political argument. No. Multiple outposts of the Northern Command were attacked in the middle of the night, November 3rd, November 4th, 2020, which is how the war started. No, they did not just invite Eritrea in. Rockets were fired by the TPLF on the outskirts of Asmara. Why do you have to lie about this? So when it comes to the UN, we have to even go back further. The TPLF, I compare it to a Russian oligarchy. It's not just a terrorist group, it's Russian oligarchy. They do the same things which Putin's crew do. Over 27 years, they sent their kids abroad, they put their money abroad, they parked it in investments, they put people in certain tactically useful positions of influence where they could make a difference. And even if you don't want to go there and go, ooh, it's so sinister, people, please. Let's look at the natural biases inherent. I mean, I've had DM conversations with a certain nitwit who, over the Axum massacre, and he says, I was there. I went to the Humera camp and I interviewed people. Yeah, you interviewed people at a camp, probably with a fixer who steered you exactly where they wanted you to go and to talk to the people they wanted you to talk to. Whereas I've got video of people walking around November 30th, uploaded December 4th. And they get really quiet because there's nothing they can do to respond to that. So we're dealing with a lot of cognitive dissonance. And when it comes to the UN, we could be dealing with everything from blatant sympathizers who want to cook the books, such as the person who allegedly selectively edited that meeting back in March, who is now persona non grata in Ethiopia and got kicked out, to people who genuinely believe that this shit is happening. You know, credit where credit is due. Hermela Argawe was tremendously courageous and brave, who towed the line, who thought, you know, who bought into this narrative, and then changed her mind and went, oh my God, we're not being told everything. And the minute she did, and she's of Tigrayan descent, and the minute she did, they just wolf-packed her and attacked her personally, tried to get her fired from her position at the local CBS affiliate. And she is very brave and holds firm and says, no, you're not going to intimidate me. I'm going to keep reporting on how I'm doing it. Doesn't mean I'll give Abby a pass, just means I'm going to look at things critically now. And we don't talk about that. We don't talk about, this is being cast as a David versus Goliath, Ethiopia versus plucky underdog. Zechariah Zelalem even used the term original underdog in one of his stories. For a terrorist group that was in charge of the country for 27 years, who's the original underdog again? So you've got a whole spectrum of views here, and you've got everything from people who are actively within the UN, within the State Department, messing around and actively trying to coerce. You have blatant liars like Alex DeWall churning out propaganda, lying in his own book about famine, lying by omission, I must point out. You have people like that. You have people like Rashid Abdi, who goes on Twitter and says Amhara fascists, and regularly slurs Amhara. Doesn't get booted off the platform, doesn't get suspended at all, and he goes on making an ethnic slur. You have Nima Elbiger, who uses the term Amharization, which again is interpreted by many Ethiopians as an ethnic slur. Doesn't even need to be used at all. What is her agenda? And people, I find it distasteful, want to attack her on the grounds that she's of Sudanese descent. We don't need to do that. Just look at her work, which is laughable, and do that. We can knock it down that. Does she have an agenda beyond that? Frankly, I'm more interested in the fact of just getting to the facts, knocking it down, saying, here's how you all cooperated with each other because you feel you're so goddamn righteous or you're so right. Well, please explain the child soldiers. Please explain Jamel Countess's interviews with Amhara children who were captives with human shields. Human shield Amhara children who were prisoners. Please explain that. Please explain my cadre and the victims that were there. Instead of going to the refugee camp to interview potential Samri youth who actually did the crimes, go to my cadre itself and talk to those victims who can, by the way, at least a few of whom can name the perpetrators by name. How often do you see that?
Yep, sorry to interrupt, Jeff. I think we're running out of time. I think we got all the questions answered. I think thank you so much again for coming to Prime Media again. I would like to thank Prime Media audiences, PrimeLogue, both in Ethiopia and in the diaspora, for joining me and Jeff in this hour. I think this will not be the last time we'll have Jeff on. I'm sure he will have more work in the future that will force us to highlight him over and over again. Jeff, thank you so much. Thank you so much for, yeah, literally, because we really have to discuss you. So that's pretty much forcing. But thank you. If you want to say anything, just say last few words. I will give you a second just to say bye.
Yeah, something's been rattling around my brain and I nearly forgot it. It was for preparation of this interview. And I thought about the difference in terms of ethics. And what's really interesting is I have had the great privilege of working with some remarkably ethical people who are on our side. We make judgment calls sometimes and we go, we can't run that. That's not corroborated. I will consult somebody, say, I'm on the fence about this. I really want to use this, but my gut's telling me not to. And they're going, yeah, your gut's right. You shouldn't use this because blah, blah, blah. We check these things. And the thing is, of course, you could say, well, of course you say that about your side. And that's not the point. The point is the people who are ethical defending Ethiopia come to their position naturally for defending Ethiopia because they are ethical people, because they weigh the evidence and go, this ain't right. This is ridiculous. It's like we're in bizarro world, like we've entered the matrix. They came to these positions naturally and ethically to defend Ethiopia because they are good people and they see what's going on. And I've had the privilege to work with them. Whereas if we look at what's going on from the other side, it's just reprehensible. But the thing is, we have to prevail. We have to prevail because this type of strategy will be used again on other African nations. Mark my words, they will try this again down the line. And maybe that time they'll succeed. So we can't let them win this time. They can't. This country of Ethiopia has never been colonized. Don't let them colonize it through these means.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you all. Have a great evening. See ya.